Phone call verification, keeping your calls legit. Your phone channel has a trust problem. You can have an elite SDR team and still lose if nobody picks up the phone. In Outbound today, the biggest obstacle often isn't your script or objection handling. It's whether the prospect believes the call is legitimate before they ever hear a word. When your number looks unknown or spammy, your connect rate gets capped at the carrier and device level, not the rep level. The behavior shift is measurable. TransUnion research found 74% of consumers don't answer unknown calls due to scam concerns, and Haya reports about 80% of unknown calls go unanswered. Those are consumer stats, but they translate directly into B2B because business buyers use the same phones, the same carriers, and the same spam filters. If you run a cold calling agency motion, in-house or outsourced, your caller identity is now part of the product. This is why phone call verification has moved from telecom hygiene to an outbound sales requirement. At SalesHive, we treat it like a controllable lever alongside list quality, targeting, and sequencing, because an unverified caller ID quietly drains pipeline. You don't just need more dials, you need more legitimate, deliverable calls. Why verification matters more than ever. Carriers and analytics platforms are reacting to an onslaught of abuse, and legitimate sales calls get caught in the crossfire. UMail estimates U.S. consumers received 52.8 billion robocalls in 2024, which pushes carriers to block or label anything that resembles high-volume, low-trust traffic. When your dialing patterns and number history look like the bad actors, you pay the same penalties even if your outreach is compliant. Mislabeling is the hidden tax on sales teams. Caller ID Reputation reports that over 30% of legitimate business calls can be inaccurately flagged as spam, scam, fraud. And NobelBiz estimates spam labeling impacts roughly 25% of business numbers. Kixi cites data that 81% of businesses have lost revenue because their calls were incorrectly flagged, turning caller ID reputation into a P&L line item, not a technical footnote. For SDR leaders, the implication is simple. Treat caller ID reputation as a core sales metric. When connect rates drop, don't default to reps aren't dialing hard enough. Isolate performance by caller ID, carrier route, and labeling status. This is where sales ops and revenue leadership can create immediate leverage without changing headcount or messaging. What phone call verification really means in B2B. In practice, phone call verification is a three-layer system: network identity, data quality, and calling behavior. Network identity is how carriers decide whether your number and route can be trusted. Data quality is whether you're calling real business lines that match your ICP. Behavior is whether your traffic resembles human sales outreach or automated robocalling. If you only fix one layer, the other two can still trigger labeling and suppression. The most misunderstood layer is network identity, especially stir-shaken. TNS reports 95% of voice traffic between top U.S. Tier 1 carriers is now signed with the highest attestation, A, which improves carriers' ability to distinguish good from bad callers. That's great news if your dialer, carrier, and number ownership are set up to earn that highest level consistently. To make this operational for an SDR agency or an outsourced sales team, you need a shared language for identity strength. The table below is a useful way to align sales, ops, and your voice provider on what each attestation level implies for deliverability and trust. Build a verification-first calling stack, not a dial more stack. Step 1 is carrier and dialer alignment. If your outbound platform routes through low-tier, gray market, or offshore paths that can't reliably support A-level stir-shaken, you're starting every call with a trust deficit. Get this confirmed in writing with your provider and treat it like you'd treat email deliverability infrastructure. For teams investing in cold calling services, this is the infrastructure equivalent of warming a domain before sending at scale. Step 2 is reputation and branding. Register your business and key numbers with major analytics and branding providers so your identity displays consistently. Branded caller ID is not just nice to have. Hire reports, enterprise customers see an average 30% increase in answer rates and a 19% increase in call conversion rates when branded calling is implemented well. If you're selling high ACV offers, the ROI math usually works quickly because you're improving the top of the call funnel, not just the close rate. Step 3 is data verification before the first dial. Buy less data and verify more of it. When you call disconnected lines, recycled numbers, or the wrong person, you generate complaints and short calls, exactly the behavioral signals that trigger spam labeling. As a B2B sales agency and sales outsourcing partner, we've learned that list-building discipline is inseparable from phone legitimacy. If your calls aren't verifiably legitimate to carriers and recognizable to humans, you're not running outbound. You're donating dials to the spam filters. Best practices that keep calls legit day after day. Start with a 30-day number audit, then make it recurring. Inventory every outbound caller ID, test how it presents across major carriers, and track answer rate and spam labeling by number, not just by rep. The goal is to catch degradation early, because once a number is labeled, your activity can look fine in the dialer, while real-world deliverability collapses. Next, implement sane dialing rules that don't resemble robocall traffic. Carriers and analytics engines hate bursty volume, rapid redials, and lots of sub-15-second calls from the same line. Those patterns are classic spam fingerprints. A practical guardrail is capping daily volume per line. Many teams land around 50 to 70 dials per day per number. Enforcing minimum ring times and distributing load across a clean pool instead of burning one hot caller ID. Finally, layer verification with human-level trust building so prospects know what they're seeing. A short pre-call email or LinkedIn message that references the number and the purpose of the call can materially change answer behavior, especially when paired with branded caller ID. This is where a coordinated motion with a cold email agency approach helps the phone channel. Your call isn't an interruption, it's a continuation. Common mistakes that quietly tank connect rates. One expensive mistake is buying cheap VoIP numbers without checking stir-shaken support or prior reputation. Recycled inventory and low-quality routes are more likely to be pre-flagged, and they get flagged faster once you scale activity. If your team feels like no one picks up anymore, the root cause may be the numbers themselves, not your SDRs. Another common failure is hammering too many dials from the same caller ID because it looks efficient on a dashboard. High volume per line and lots of ultra-short calls are exactly what carriers associate with robocalling, and the labeling data is unforgiving. When up to 30% of legitimate calls can be mislabeled, you can't afford to hand analytics engines extra reasons to distrust your traffic. Fixing this is a process change, dialing limits, slower ramps for new numbers, and immediate retirement/remediation when labels appear. The third mistake is ignoring list hygiene and phone verification, then hoping tech will save you. Bad numbers increase wrong party contacts and complaint probability, which compounds reputation damage across your pool. The solution is boring but effective. Verify line status, carrier, and type, mobile versus landline, scrub DNC where applicable, and prioritize direct dials that match your ICP before the record ever enters your cadence. Optimization, Tie reputation to revenue like a real KPI. Once your baseline is stable, optimize like you would email deliverability. Monitor weekly, remediate fast, and attribute performance to infrastructure variables. Track answer rate, spam labeling incidents, and conversion by caller ID and carrier route so you can see where the system is failing. When leaders treat reputation as a KPI, reps stop getting blamed for problems they can't control, and pipeline forecasting becomes more honest. Branded calling is often the most direct answer rate lever for high-value teams, especially in SaaS, financial services, healthcare, and complex manufacturing. When enterprises report average lifts like 30% more answers and 19% higher call conversion, you can model ROI in meetings booked, not just brand awareness. In practice, branded caller ID performs best when your number pool is clean and your sequences set context before the call. At SalesHive, this is why our sales development agency playbook combines number management with rigorous list-building services and multi-channel outreach. We've booked 100,000-plus meetings for 1,500-plus B2B clients by treating legitimacy as part of the Outbound system, alongside targeting, personalization, and follow-up. Whether you hire SDRs internally or work with an outbound sales agency, these controls are what keep cold calling from turning into wasted activity. Next steps: a 30 to 60-day plan to keep calls legit. In the next 30 days, run a full inventory and health check. Every number, every carrier route, and how your calls display on real devices. Replace or remediate any lines showing warnings, and consolidate traffic onto compliant, business-grade routes that can support strong, stir-shaken outcomes. Make number readiness a prerequisite for scaling dials, especially if you're ramping a new outsourced sales team or launching a new territory. In days 31 through 60, operationalize prevention. Bake phone verification into list building, add guardrails to your dialer, and formalize a monitoring cadence. Register with major analytics branding providers where it makes sense, and standardize pre-call context in your sequences so the call isn't a surprise. The goal is to reduce unknown call avoidance, driven by the broader market reality that 80% of unknown calls may go unanswered. Looking forward, the bar for legitimacy will keep rising as carriers refine enforcement and buyers get more cautious. The upside is that verification rewards good actors. When you prove identity, protect reputation, and call verified numbers with human-like patterns, you're aligned with the direction of the network. If you want the phone channel to keep pulling its weight in pipeline, legit by default needs to become part of how your cold calling team operates.